Hello. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of D&D Optimized, the show where each week we take a deep dive into one or two characters for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we crunch numbers and we theory craft, and we do our best to get the most out of that particular character for the role that we've chosen to build it for. So, welcome. Thanks for being here. My name's Colby. And, if you enjoy creating characters in Dungeons & Dragons almost as much as you enjoy playing the game, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and we are super happy to have you. Before I jump into the episode today, I have just a couple of quick announcements. First of all, of course, if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe and share and all of those things so you don't miss future episodes. And it's great for me, of course, so I'm being selfish there. Also, apparently, I now have a TikTok account. I'm only doing 1 or 2 videos a week. I actually don't even do the videos. That is handled by Mr. Rogers, so big shout out and thank you to Mr. Rogers there. But if you use TikTok, I'd appreciate a follow. If you don't use TikTok, stay away. I am also planning on announcing my first foray into the YouTube membership program later this week, so look for an announcement along those lines coming soon. And then finally, this is kind of exciting. Dave, over at Nerdarchy, for those of you who follow Nerdarchy, if not, find them here. But he reached out to me and asked to interview me for their secondary channel. I think it's called Nerdarchy Live. And that's going to happen next week sometime. At least the interview will. I'm not sure when they will post the video, but I will be cross-posting it here as well. And so we're just going to have a bit of a chat and a little interview, which I'm excited about. So stay tuned for that little collaboration crossover thing that's happening. Okay, into the episode today. All right. Fine. I will do a Blood Hunter. You know what? Okay, let me get this out of the way first. I seriously and sincerely love Critical Role and Matt Mercer. I am one of those people who don't think that the Matt Mercer effect is really bad for the game. I think he and his friends have kind of elevated the game to new levels, or at least kind of shown us what's possible or what a D&D game session and experience can be like. And even if it potentially creates sort of this false expectation that a lot of us have a hard time living up to when it comes to story and role play and all of those things, they've brought in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players to this game and really opened it up in a way that few, if any, others ever have. And I think they're largely responsible for, if we're in a golden age of D&D right now, which a lot of people, I guess, think we are, and I think I probably subscribe to that belief myself, I think they can take a lot of credit for helping get us there. So anyway, one man's opinion, personal bias out of the way. I have been very hesitant to do a Blood Hunter build, which, for those who don't know, was a new class sort of created by Matt Mercer and, with help from his friends over at Critical Role, because it is, as yet, unofficial content for Dungeons & Dragons, right? It's not even Unearthed Arcana. Yes, it's available on D&D Beyond, but that doesn't mean that it's officially sanctioned by Wizards of the Coast, right? And for the most part, I have tried to kind of only put out videos that I can feel relatively confident that most people who play Dungeons & Dragons will be able to actually play and have access to, in before the Elven Accuracy custom lineage shenanigan comments. But I have had more requests to do a Blood Hunter build than any other class, by far, at least of those that I haven't yet done, right? And the poll that I put out a couple of weeks ago asking what you guys wanted to see next, the Wizard Tank came in first, but Blood Hunter was a very close second. It was really neck and neck the whole way. So I sort of feel morally and ethically obligated to do a Blood Hunter build for you guys. And I've been promising that I'd get to it eventually, so here we are. Now, of course, if I'm being honest with myself, I am thrilled to have an opportunity to, and an excuse, I guess, to do a Blood Hunter build, because yes, I also would love to play a cross between Van Helsing, a Grey Warden from Dragon Age, and The Witcher in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So I guess thank you for continuing to bug me about it until I finally felt like I had an excuse to do this. But anyway, there are, in my opinion, two ways to build a Blood Hunter in order to sort of really try to get maximum sustained damage per round, and that's what we're going for with the build today. There's a ranged version, I think, and a melee version, right? And today we're going to focus on the ranged version because I feel like it's maybe just a little more well-rounded and maybe a little more fun. But stick around for the final thoughts section of the video, and I'll give an alternative sort of melee version of the build that's very similar in many ways with, one big change and a couple of minor changes along the way to get us there, and I'll even mention how the numbers compare. Preamble out of the way, let's jump into the Blood Hunter. Except at level 1, we're actually starting Artificer. Look at me. I resisted doing an Artificer build for so long, and I've resisted going Blood Hunter, and now here I am combining them into a single character. And 2 weeks in a row, for that matter, with Artificer dip. So we get a lot of important goodies out of Artificer, which we'll get into here as we go. I love being able to start with Constitution saving throws, which proficiency, which Artificers get. That's great, but there's much, much more. As for the race, yes, we're going custom lineage. We want 2 feats for this build, whether we go ranged or melee, actually. And so in order to just be strong early and middle and late, we want to come online as quickly as possible. We won't be getting Elven accuracy, so elf or half elf isn't necessary. And like I say, a free feat is just going to make this build a lot stronger, a lot quicker. But if you really want to play another race for whatever reason, then you absolutely should. Especially if you already get a free feat at your table. My number one alternative recommendation, I guess, would be Kobold for pack tactics, which lets you have advantage when you make an attack against an enemy who's standing within 5 feet of one of your allies, basically. And so as long as you can assume that you're going to have that reliably, and that you're not in direct sunlight a lot of the time, because then you're going to lose that advantage. You have disadvantage if you or your enemy is in direct sunlight. So, those are things to consider, but that almost guaranteed advantage that the Kobold gets is very strong. In fact, it's so strong that going Kobold would be better for our numbers once you get to kind of the mid-late game. If you think that this character is going to be around for that long, and or you're okay coming online a little bit more slowly in order to, reap the power benefits later, then go Kobold. As for the free feat that we would be getting if we went Variant Human, I would recommend starting with Crossbow Expert. So just as a reminder, and or for those who don't know, Crossbow Expert gives us a lot of great things. It takes away the disadvantage that we may have if we're making a ranged attack and our enemy is within 5 feet of us. And if we take the attack action with a one-handed weapon, then as a bonus action, we can make an attack with a hand crossbow, thereby letting us weaponize our bonus attack. And again, keep in mind that the hand crossbow is a one-handed weapon, and so our plan here will be to make an attack with a one-handed weapon and then get a bonus attack with that same weapon, being the hand crossbow, right, for all of the attacks that we will be making. That's just really powerful to have an extra attack at level 1 with your weapon of choice. Even though the hand crossbow is only a d6 of damage, because of the way that mechanics in the game work and the way that we get to apply our ability modifier and other things later to each and every attack, it's just really strong, despite the fact that it's not a big weapon die of damage, right? For ability scores, assuming point buy, as always, I recommend that we start with a 15 intelligence, and we apply our +2 bonus from our custom lineage there, so we'd have a 17 intelligence, and then pick up a 14 constitution because hit points are great and constitution saving throws are important, and a 14 dexterity because it will help us with our armor class and our initiative and other things. And then put the other points wherever you see fit. As for equipment, I would go with the gold buy option for this character. And you roll the dice and you get some gold, and you should have about 120 gold or so, which should let you afford to get some scale mail, armor, a shield, and a hand crossbow. And then get your other necessities that you may need. Interestingly, you cannot use that hand crossbow just yet because it's a martial ranged weapon and you don't have proficiency with martial weapons, but we'll get there. So for now, we're just going to be using cantrips for the most part to do damage for these first couple of levels here. As an artificer at level 1, you get magical tinkering, which is really cool and adds lots of fun RP and utility and flavor that I'm not going to get into. And of course, we get spells. Like I've mentioned, you don't have great martial ability currently, so plan on using your spells for offense. Basically, just stay alive and throw out probably Firebolt for a cantrip most of your turns. Grab Mending, you're going to want that later. And then I would pick up Absorb Elements. It's a great defensive spell. You can use it as a reaction when you take elemental damage, and it gives you resistance to that damage, plus a little extra damage on your next attack of that element's type. That's useful throughout the game, really. And I would probably pick up Cure Wounds because it's nice to be able to heal in a pinch. All right, at level 2, we get our Artificer Infusions. Infusions are the best. So you can take non-magical items, imbue them, and make them magical. You can't use any infusions more than once, any single infusion more than one time, and no one item can hold multiple infusions. 4, but you can only have 2 active at any one time, right? So for right now, for our active infusions, I would recommend Enhanced Armor, which gives you a +1 to your armor class. You infuse your armor, right? So right now we are actually at a 14 AC for our scale mail, +2 for dexterity, +1 for the infusion we just put on it, +2 for our shield, so a 19 AC, which is really pretty good at level 2 for a ranged character especially. And that will go up as we get better medium armor, right, all the way up to half-plate. For the second active infusion, I'd probably go Arcane Focus. It gives your spell attacks a +1 to hit. We'll be swapping that out soon, and you can swap out your infusions when you gain a level, not after a long rest, like I mentioned in last week's video. At level 3, okay, here we go. So we get our Artificer Specialist, our subclass, and we are going Battlesmith. It's so good. You get some additional spells, so you get Heroism, which gives you some temporary hit points. That's nice. The shield spell, which, as we've mentioned many times on this channel, is really fantastic, right? Again, it's a reaction defensive spell. You cast it as a reaction when you get hit by an attack. It raises your AC by 5, potentially causing that attack to miss, and then it stays 5 higher until your turn. So it's just a very strong defensive spell for us. We also get the Battle Ready feature. This gives us proficiency with martial weapons. So it's time to pull out that hand crossbow that you've been carrying around all this time. And by the way, there should be a story there, right? There should be a reason. Why have you been carrying around this hand crossbow all this time, but haven't yet used it? Is it some sort of heirloom that you felt unworthy to use? Did you have to figure out how to unlock its power? What's the story there? But when you level, be sure to swap out your Arcane Focus infusion for a new infusion called the Repeating Shot infusion. And this makes so many of you happy, I know. And it makes me happy too. So now your hand crossbow that you put this infusion on is a +1 magical weapon, which is great in and of itself. But wait, there's more. So it ignores the loading property and automatically and magically produces its own ammo when you make a ranged attack with it. This means that you don't need a free hand to load it, and it means that you can keep using your shield. And man, if I had a nickel for every time someone in my crossbow fighter video talked about and chastised me for saying that you could use a shield and fire a hand crossbow multiple times in a turn, I would have at least like 75 or 80 cents. So I guess not that much money. But This is super fantastic. Not only does it let you continue to use your shield and keep that armor class bonus, but it's such a huge quality of life improvement. It totally, most importantly, lets you pretend that you are Hank from my favorite cartoon in the 80s, the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. You know what I'm talking about. Best cartoon ever. All right, so, but wait, there's more. We're not even done talking about the sweetness that is the Battlesmith. So when you attack with a magic weapon, which we are doing now, thanks to our infusion, right, you get to use your intelligence modifier instead of your strength or dexterity modifier for the plus to hit and plus to damage. It's too bad that we're sitting at this awkward, odd 17 number for our intelligence modifier, but never fear. We will deal with that momentarily. Holy crap, we haven't even gotten to our Steel Defender yet, which we also get as a Battlesmith. The reality is this build isn't going to make super fantastic use of our little Steel Defender. It's a faithful construct that we've assembled with our tinkering. It obeys our commands. We determine its appearance, although it is medium in size. It takes its turn right after ours, but it just takes the dodge action unless we use our bonus action to command it to do something else, like make an attack or something else, repair itself, etc. Unfortunately, because we have the crossbow expert feat, our bonus action is going to generally be spoken for, so this Steel Defender is pretty much just taking the dodge action all the time. But it is still super useful, because when it's within 5 feet of an attacker that it can see, it uses its reaction to cause one attack from that enemy to be made with disadvantage so long as that enemy is attacking something other than the Steel Defender. So it's just a really great damage soak, and it throws up that soft taunt to kind of help protect your allies, right? Either it's not going to attack your ally or it will do so with disadvantage. And so everyone in your party will love it and pet it and feed it treats, and it will be a great party mascot. Keep in mind that you can repair it with the Mending cantrip. It takes 1 minute to cast the Mending cantrip, so we really will only be doing that outside of combat. You can also, if it dies, if it perishes, breaks, you can revive it with a single spell slot. It takes 1 minute for it to sort of repair itself after you cast that spell, use that spell slot, I guess I should say. So again, that really is only going to happen outside of combat. But if you're out of spell slots, no worries. It can be brought back after a long rest. So it's fantastic. It's such a good Steel Defender. Who's a good metal puppy? You are. Okay, at level 4, we are going Blood Hunter 1. So this is the hardest time in our character's life. It is the winter of our discontent. I wanted to go 4 levels in Artificer so bad in order to pick up a very important feat. But then I would have wanted to go 5 levels in Artificer so we could get extra attack, and it just would have slowed down the rest of the build so much that it just would have been bad for us in the long run. It will be worth it eventually, don't worry. Yes, we're going through the Valley of the Shadow of Death right now for a few levels. And that actually might be fitting thematically, because we're making the switch to Blood Hunter. Something has happened, right, in our early career to cause a shift or a change in us. Things were going great, but maybe a monster killed someone dear to you, or a hero of yours has sort of inspired you to make this drastic change, and I don't know, for some reason you have felt inspired to leave behind your magical tinkering and start wearing eyeliner. For whatever reason. So you are now a monster who fights monsters. You are probably dark and brooding, maybe a little emo. You hurt yourself to hurt others. That'll teach them. You probably listen to Dashboard Confessional, who I actually love, for the record. Okay, so as a Blood Hunter 1, we get the Hunter's Bane feature. And this is the description. You've gone through a dangerous, long-guarded ritual that alters your life's blood, forever binding you to the darkness and honing your senses against it. For those who are fans of Dragon Age, you know Mr. Grey Warden, or Mrs., or Ms. what I'm talking about here. You have advantage on wisdom, survival checks to track fae, fiends, or undead, as well as on intelligence ability checks to recall information about them. So just some great kind of utility there. We also get Blood Curse. Think of these like Blood Hunter spells. You get one for now, and you get to use it once per short rest, although you'll learn more later and get to use them more frequently later. And to be honest, I am not going to recommend a single one. Don't be upset. Almost all of them are great for utility or control or roleplay or all of the above. The ones that do damage require your bonus action, and it's pretty much always a net loss for us in damage for our sustained DPR to use them for that purpose. So seriously, look at them, knock yourself out. There's lots of great, fun, cool ones. My favorites are probably the Curse of the Eyeless, which is going to give an enemy disadvantage on an attack, and Curse of the Fallen Puppet, which is very macabre, super creepy. As an enemy is dying, you can curse them to basically make an attack against another enemy. And keep in mind that each of these can be amplified to make them even more powerful. But they come at the cost of inflicting damage on yourself equivalent to your Hemocraft die. Now, what is a Hemocraft die? Some of you may be asking. For right now, it's a D4, but it goes up as you level, and usually this Hemocraft is kind of the thing that fuels our additional Blood Hunter abilities and powers. Usually we're damaging ourselves in order to give us more power and or greater damage. So at level 5, we are a Blood Hunter 2, and we get a fighting style, and I love fighting styles. And we're taking archery. Archery is my favorite of the fighting styles because +2 to hit, which we get from it when we used a ranged weapon attack, is just really, really good, especially when you're already using a +1 weapon, and later we're going to do something that is going to give us a minus to hit, right? It really helps make up for the fact that we are not getting a reliable source of advantage with this build. It doesn't totally make up for that fact, but it helps. Also, as a Blood Hunter 2, we get our Crimson Rite, our Blood Rite. So the Crimson Rite is something that, in my opinion, makes Blood Hunters strong. And it's also the reason why, as a Blood Hunter, it's really in your best interest to try to make all of your attacks with the same weapon. So not 2-weapon fighting, not like thrown weapons, right? You pick one weapon and you stick to it, because as a bonus action, what the Blood Rite will let you do is you activate a rite on your chosen weapon that basically imbues this weapon with either extra fire, cold, or lightning damage, depending on which rite you choose, every time you hit with it. You lose a number of hit points equal to your Hemocraft die, again, a D4 right now. But now, from now on, until you finish a short or a long rest, or you let go of your weapon, it's going to do an extra D4 of that element in damage. And that's a little weird, I think. It basically encourages you to never drop your weapon, right? So I guess after combat, stow your shield, but keep that hand crossbow in your hand at all times, or else if you put it away, when you pull it out again, you're gonna have to use a bonus action and hurt yourself in order to get that extra damage. But if you just keep it in your hand all the time, then that's a little weird. Talk that over with your DM. See if you can't work out a quality of life improvement there. I think maybe you just cast it once per day and now it's just active until the day's over or something. I don't know. Anyway, as far as which rite to choose, you get the Rite of the Flame, Rite of the Frozen, or Rite of the Storm. Like I mentioned, fire, cold, or lightning damage. Obviously, it's going to depend on what you're fighting and which elemental damage you like best. Personally, I think I'd go lightning just because I think that would be the coolest, but also I think you run into fewer monsters with resistance to lightning than you do fire or cold. Could be wrong. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Probably multiple people, and that's okay. Pick which you think will be best for you and that you like the most. This ability, again, it's kind of like a concentration-free, spell slot-free Hunter's Mark or Hex spell, right? And it scales as you level. It doesn't cost you a bonus action to transfer it to a new target every time because you cast it on your weapon. And all it costs you is a little bit of damage to yourself. It's very strong, and it definitely encourages us to not only always use the same weapon, but look for ways to get as many attacks as possible in a single turn. Okay, at level 6, we are a Blood Hunter 3, and we get our Blood Hunter order, our Blood Hunter subclass, and we are going with the Order of the Mutant. And now we get to live out all of our wildest Geralt of Rivia fantasies. The Order of the Mutant focuses on brewing toxic elixirs to modify your abilities in battle. And let me tell you, there are some good ones, some mutagens. So we get to learn 4 mutagen formulas for now, but we can basically only concoct one at a time. And it's after we finish a short or a long rest, and if we don't use them before the next short rest, then they expire, so we don't get to stack them. But the way these mutagens work is that they come with a benefit and a cost. So, for example, you may gain resistance to piercing damage, but vulnerability to slashing damage. Or you may get an increased, you can take a mutagen that will give you increased move speed, 10 feet of move speed, but then you will have disadvantage on saving throws. The cost is not usually too drastic, but it could be really rough in certain situations, so use them carefully. As for which mutagen I recommend that we take regularly, the Sagacity mutagen. So, alright, this thing raises your intelligence and your max intelligence score, which is hard to do in Dungeons & Dragons, by 3. That is really, really strong. And here we've been sitting with this odd numbered intelligence. It's a 17 intelligence, and now we get to take this mutagen, and we're effectively at a 20 intelligence at level 6, and it's like I've had this itch in the small of my back that I can't get to, and then the Sagacity mutagen comes along, and it's just a scratch, and I'm just like, so good. Okay, so anyway, like I said, this raises your intelligence and your intelligence cap, so we can now get our intelligence over 20 if and when we start actually bumping our intelligence, and it's like I've died and gone to numbers heaven. So keep in mind, there is a drawback, of course, as with all mutagens. It does give you disadvantage on your charisma saving throws, and that can be pretty painful against certain spells and monster abilities. So watch out for mean dungeon masters who like to throw out charisma save spells and effects. They're not necessarily mean, they're just trying to challenge you, and I get it, and that's fine. Just so long as every single monster that you fight doesn't have some sort of charisma saving throw effect that it comes with it, then you might start to wonder if your DM doesn't have it in for you. But anyway, I think it's worth the risk. And as far as the other mutagens, you should absolutely, because you get 4, like I said, you should absolutely take the ones that you think you might need or want to draw on for special situations. There are lots of cool and fun ones, and I'm not really going to get into them because we're basically just planning on drinking that delicious Sagacity potion all the time. So, damage report. With a 20 intelligence, the archery fighting style, and a +1 weapon, we are at a +11 to hit, and a +6 to damage at level 6, right? That's really good. You should be landing almost all of your attacks, depending on, what monster you're up against. I still wish we had advantage, but we don't, and a +11 to hit is awesome. So, problem, we're only making 2 attacks, right? Because we have not yet gotten to an extra attack ability. We're only 3 and 3 as far as our levels go in these classes. So I know that hurts. But we do get to add an extra d4 of damage to each of those attacks, so that's nice. But at an enemy armor class of 10, we are on average going to be doing 23 damage per round. And against an enemy armor class of 15, it's just a teeny bit less, it's 21. So after all of the gushing that I just did about the numbers, the damage is admittedly a little subpar, at the moment, but fear not. It is going to get much, much better. At level 7, we are a Blood Hunter 4, and we finally get our first ability score increase, or feat. And we are going to take a feat. We're going Sharpshooter. So Sharpshooter's fantastic for us, and especially fantastic thanks to our high plus to hit. So again, as a reminder, Sharpshooter, it gives us a number of things. It lets us shoot at a further range without taking disadvantage on our weapon. It lets us ignore half cover and 3/4 cover against enemies when we're making ranged attacks against them. And most importantly for us, it lets you, if you want, take a -5 to hit penalty, but add +10 flat damage to each ranged weapon attack that we land. And this is super strong, again, especially for us where we have a really high plus to hit right now. Still wish we had advantage, but that's okay. And this is just, yeah, this is great. This is a lot of extra damage. At level 8, we are a Blood Hunter 5. And finally, we get an extra attack. So again, now we're making 3 attacks per turn. We make an attack with the hand crossbow, extra attack with the hand crossbow, and because we used a one-handed weapon, we get to make a bonus action attack with a hand crossbow. So we get 3 attacks, all of which do our Hemocraft die, which, by the way, goes up to a D6 now from a D4. So it hurts us a little bit more, but it hurts the enemies even more, because we're doing 3 attacks against them forever until we drop the weapon anyway. So that's super nice. And this is really kind of the peak of our damage, at least compared to other sustained damage builds. We're very, very competitive with the cream of the crop, frankly, right now, thanks to all of these great feats that have finally come online. At level 9, we're a Blood Hunter 6, and we get the Brand of Castigation feature. This is pretty cool and super thematic. On 1 creature per short rest, basically, when you damage a creature with your right, with that extra fire, lightning, or cold damage, right, you can brand it. And from then on, you always know the direction to the creature, and every time they damage you or someone standing within 5 feet of you, then the branded creature takes damage equal to your intelligence modifier, which is a +5 right now, and that's pretty good, just a flat +5. It's a great way to track a particularly nasty enemy that you may need to, especially if you think they're gonna try and escape, run away, and of course to do a little extra damage to them. It's not particularly sustainable because it's only 1 target per short rest. You don't get to transfer it to someone after they die or anything like that. But it feels great thematically. It's a nice way to add some extra damage and improve your tracking abilities. You also do learn another Blood Curse at this level, and you can use your Blood Curse twice per short rest instead of once. So you're getting a little more utility and roleplay and control features and options, which is always welcome. Okay, level 9 damage report. Since our last check-in, we have gained another attack. Our proficiency has gone up by 1. Our hemo die went up to a D6, and we gained the Sharpshooter feat. We got a lot of power in these last 3 levels. Against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we are now averaging almost triple what we were last check, 63 damage per round. And against an enemy with a 16 armor class, it's 42. That is more like it. All right. At level 10, we are a Blood Hunter 7. You get an extra Primal Right, which is great in case you run into something that has resistance to whatever your first Primal Right that you took was. So if you took Lightning, now you could get Cold or Fire, and hopefully you won't run into much that will resist both of the elemental damage that you're throwing at them, though those monsters do exist. You also get the Strange Metabolism feature, which makes you immune to poison damage and the poisoned condition, which is super great. Also, once per long rest, you can ignore the drawback of your mutagen for 1 minute. So that's a fantastic option for when you really want to keep your intelligence bump from your mutagen, but you're afraid of charisma saving throw spell or ability that someone you're fighting may throw at you. At level 11, we are a Blood Hunter 8, and we get another ability score increase or feat. You know what I've been thinking this whole time? I'd really love to have a great way to get a concentration spell that would allow me to add a little extra damage to each attack that I make. You know what would be even better? Is if I could find a way to get a +1 intelligence bump from that, because the 17 intelligence still bugs me a little bit. So enter the perfect feat, Fey Touched. You get a +1 to your intelligence or your wisdom or charisma, but obviously we're going intelligence. And you learn the Misty Step spell, which is one of my favorite mobility spells. You, as a bonus action, you can teleport basically 30 feet. And you learn 1 additional first level spell. Now, unfortunately, that spell has to be from the enchantment or the divination school. But wait, Hunter's Mark is from the enchantment school, and Hex is from the divination school. And you can cast both Misty Step and this free spell that you choose once per long rest without using a spell slot, and after that you can use any existing spell slots you have to cast it. And we have 3 first level spell slots because of our artificer levels, so now we can do it 4 times, which should allow us to basically use it anytime that we need it. And my whole body is just singing right now. It's just glory spren bursting all over the place. So choose the spell that you want, Hunter's Mark or Hex. I would probably go Hex because the extra damage that it deals is necrotic, which is going to be less easily resisted than the just weapon damage that you get from Hunter's Mark. And also, when you Hex a creature, you get to choose an ability check that they are going to have disadvantage on so long as they're hexed, which is just nice. It won't come into play a lot, but once in a while it'll be nice to have. Hunter's Mark does, on the other hand, let you track them easier, but you kind of already have a great tracking ability with your castigation, like we just talked about. So again, for me, I'm going Hex. You take which one you want. Remember, both of these spells require your concentration, and they do require a bonus action to cast. But then once the target dies, you can transfer it as a bonus action to another target. That's great against targets that are going to survive for 2 or 3 or more rounds, right? But if you're fighting like 10 kobolds, don't bother with the Hex spell, right? You just, because that bonus action, obviously you're giving up one of your weapon attacks anytime you use it. So be prudent when you do and do not use it, but obviously against a tough to kill target that you're going to be hitting a few times, throw it up there. It's going to be some nice extra damage for you. FYI, with our mutagen, our intelligence is now a 21. We're going to have to do something about that, and we will. At level 12, we are a Blood Hunter 9. We get Grim Psychometry, which is a super cool detective, mystical Batman-like feature. That's great for utility and for roleplay, and will let you kind of learn things about a crime scene, and maybe. Well, anyway, read up on it. It's awesome. I'm not going to get into it. Level 13, we are a Blood Hunter 10. We also get the Dark Augmentation feature, which increases our move speed by 5 and lets you add your intelligence modifier to your strength, dexterity, and constitution saving throws. It's like we just started using a spell that requires our concentration or something. I mean, it's just... so happy. Our con save right now, for the record, is a +12. And that's so good. We're hardly ever going to lose concentration. Damage report for level 13. Okay, our proficiency has gone up by 1. We have added Hex damage, or Hunter's Mark damage, to each attack, right? And so all of that considered, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we are doing 77 damage per round, and against an enemy with a 17 armor class, we're doing 49 damage per round on average, and that is quite good. At level 14, we are a Blood Hunter 11. This is a great level for us. So our Hemocraft die goes from a d6 to a d8, so now we're doing even more damage per attack for our right damage. And our sagacity mutagen now bumps our intelligence by 4. So we have a total of 22 intelligence. We also get Brand of Axiom as a mutant, and it adds some nice little control against a creature who uses illusions, invisibility, or polymorph on themselves, basically ending or potentially ending those abilities on the creature that's trying to use them on itself if you use your castigation on them. And that will be super cool and super powerful every once in a while. So DMs, totally give your players a chance to use this and feel awesome because it's super niche. Level 15, Bloodhunter 12. We get another ability score, and we're going to cap our intelligence at 20, and so now our intelligence is a 24. At level 16, we are a Bloodhunter 13, and we get our 3rd blood curse. So now we know 3 blood curses, and we get to use our blood curse 3 times per short rest. Just some great extra utility and control and roleplay options. And you also get Brand of Tethering, which is basically an upgrade to our Brand of Castigation. So now when you use your Brand of Castigation on a creature, the damage that they take when they hit you or someone within 5 feet of you is twice your intelligence modifier, which by the way is a +7 now, so that's 14 damage that they would take when they hit you if they are branded. That's really nice. They also can't dash, they can't teleport, or leave this plane of existence if they fail a wisdom save anyway. And that they will take 4d6 psychic damage if they try to do one of those things, regardless of whether they fail their save or not. Ain't no one getting away from you ever. At level 17, you are a Bloodhunter 14, and you get the Hardened Soul feature. This gives you advantage on saves against being charmed or frightened, which is just a great tool for our sort of defensive arsenal. And you actually also get to add an esoteric right to your primal rights, right? So you had elemental damage. Now you get 1 esoteric right that you could use instead, and you get to choose between, instead of fire, cold, or lightning, it's necrotic, psychic, or thunder damage. Take what you want. I probably go psychic. I think that's least resisted by most monsters. So that's a great 3rd option for that extra damage that you're going to be doing on every attack. Speaking of damage, we'll do our final damage report here at level 17. So you, for reals, with your +1 hand crossbow, your incredibly high intelligence score, and your archery fighting style, have a +16 to hit right now. Your hand crossbow gives you +1 damage. You get an extra d6 for your hex damage. You get an extra d8 for your right damage, and an extra 10 of sharpshooter, flat 10 of sharpshooter, +7 for your intelligence modifier. That's a lot of extra damage sources, and you're getting 3 attacks a turn. So against an enemy with a 10 armor class, you're doing 86 damage on average. And against an 18 armor class, you're doing 64 damage per round on average. Final thoughts. I just love, in case you couldn't tell, the feel of this build. It is such perfect symmetry. Nothing is wasted. You get just about everything you want, and it all just works in perfect numerical harmony. The thing I love about it the most is how well-rounded it is. You have solid survivability. You have good mobility. You've got really good utility, control, kind of roleplay features and options thanks to your spells, your Tinkerer, Artificer abilities, your Steel Defender. That's a great boon for your whole party. Your blood curses. And then on top of that all, you've got really good damage. Now, admittedly, for all of my gushing over the perfection of the numbers, at the end of the day, it's just kind of okay. Compared to other sustained damage builds that I've done. It's like middle of the pack tier 2. For those who are familiar with kind of the graphs and the charts and the spreadsheets, check the video description to see kind of how I compare this to others and see the math on it and things like that. Admittedly, every sustained damage build that I've done that's in those graphs is like hyper optimized for damage. So, middle of the pack tier 2 is still really pretty dang good. But yeah, it doesn't feel particularly overpowered, at least to me, on the damage front, which is great. It's just really well rounded. I think it'd be a ton of fun to play. You are a true stalker of evil with lots of gadgets. In fact, the more that I think about it, because you're sort of this dark stalker in the night who is a great detective and also has like all of these gadgets from your artificer abilities, like that's your utility belt. This feels more like Batman than it does The Witcher, which I love, and hopefully you will too. I promised a melee version of the build in the final thoughts, and so let me just tell you about it really quick. Basically, you'd be taking barbarian levels instead of artificer levels, but you will wait. So you'd go blood hunter to 5 to get extra attack and your 2 feats, and then take 3 levels of barbarian and then back to blood hunter. Of course, you would take polearm master and great weapon master for your feats instead of sharpshooter and crossbow expert, and take the barbarian subclass of your choice. Probably zealot if you're trying to maximize damage, but doing this will give you rage damage. It will give you guaranteed advantage thanks to reckless attacks that barbarian gets, which is really, really strong. And so the question is, how does the damage compare? And the answer is, at level 9, when the artificer ranged build that we just did was at its peak, sort of, compared to other sustained damage builds, this sort of barbarian melee version would do significantly more damage. We're talking about 20 damage per round. It's a little heady. You can take a mutagen that gives you strength, just like you could take one that gives you intelligence, and your weapon hits harder, you get rage damage, but the most important factor for why the damage is so much higher is because of that on-demand advantage from reckless attacks. Even though your plus to hit is not as high as the ranged damage version was, advantage, especially with that -5 to hit, is just superior to +2 to hit. It's really, really good. Your enemies would have advantage on attacks against you, though, if you used reckless attacks. And even though as a barbarian you have resistance while you're raging to, a lot of the damage that you would be taking, you're still, your armor class is a lot lower, and you're in melee range. So the reality is your survivability is not going to be as strong with this barbarian build, and you're going to give up some of the kind of utility and things that the artificer was giving you, and some of the party benefits like your steel defender and things like that. So more damage, but you give up some stuff. You give up some survivability and some utility and things. So that's the trade-off. And that is the show for the week. So thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much, so much. You're fantastic. So thank you for all of your support, and please do make sure to check out our subreddit and check us out on Facebook and on Twitter and even TikTok, like I mentioned. And of course, if you have a build that you would like me to do a deep dive on, please, put it down in the comments. Give me a little detail on what you might be looking for and what role you'd like to see that build fulfill. And I will add it to the list and do my best, hopefully one day soon, to optimize it for you. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. I had a favor to ask. If you guys would be so kind, I would love it if you would maybe retweet this build on Twitter when I put it up there, and or tag like Matt Mercer or any of the people from Critical Role. I'm sure they get flooded with tweets and things, but I would love to get their feedback or impressions on the build that I did for the Blood Hunter class that they so lovingly and painstakingly crafted. Anyway, don't feel obligated, but if you want to do me a favor, I would be particularly grateful. So anyway, thanks for those who do. Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you soon.